You don't have to say anything. I'm just, I'll just be, that'll help me pace it correctly. So you can have that when it's time for that. So, all right, well, let's give this a try. All right, well, welcome to our last section of the healing zone. And today is going to be on some things that are like practical applications that can be used. So we'll do a brief little review of what we've covered and then go to, and then explain a little further about some of the ways that we can look at how things impact us and then things that might help. So I'm going to go to slide 2, and first part of the review then is what we talked about with how our brains react to the situations we find ourselves in. And there's a little vocabulary word there at the bottom, or 2 words, but polyvagal theory, which is the idea that our brain systems process the sensory input that we have in kind of 3 ways at once. There's 3 systems. So one system that I refer to as the strategy system involves our neocortex, or the top of our brain, where we have our rational thinking, but we also have our creativity and all of our capacities that we have for coming up with ideas and solutions and creative expression are there. The second system is the part of the emotional brain, and that system I refer to as safety system, which is the part of our emotional reaction that is looking for risk or looking for things that might be painful or dangerous. And so people often talk about the amygdala part of the brain, 2 walnut-sized portions of the brain right in from the ear, where we're scanning for risk and danger and something that might be painful. If there's a hint of that, then our fight or flight response might be triggered. And so we've talked about strategy, safety, another system, and then a third system woven in, which is our survival system. When things look desperate, not as if we should just be dealing with danger, but desperate, then our survival system kicks in, and that's faint or freeze. So that shuts things down so that we can survive. We're not trying to defend ourselves, we're not trying to problem solve, we're just trying to survive. That's the polyvagal theory, those 3 parts. So then if we go to slide 3, it's just kind of re-going over those 3 things. So strategy mode, safety mode, fight or flight, survival mode, faint or freeze. And then the part that's important is that sometimes our brain overreacts because based on previous experience, it thinks something's dangerous when it's not. So in those times when we're going to survival mode or safety mode, based on experience, we might need strategies, ready-made strategies, because the part of our brain that handles that is shut down. So we need to have some automatic responses while we're not thinking clearly. We might sense danger or desperation, but we might be partly aware, if we take a second, that our reaction doesn't quite match the situation. We think of people who've been in combat who have flashbacks if they hear fireworks. Well, fireworks is a celebration, things are very safe, but they hear the loud explosion and their memory says, this is dangerous. And so their survival mode or their fight or flight mode is kicked in. In those situations, we might need strategies on hand, because if we follow our brain's natural instincts, we will be mismatching our actions with the setting. So if we decide that it's time to shoot at anything that moves, well, that's not going to be appropriate on the 4th of July. So we need other strategies. The first of those strategies then that we're going to talk about is deep breathing. And that is one that people are familiar with. If you're under stress, take a deep breath. The ideas here are that deep breathing takes a function that the brain does automatically, something that comes from the automatic response from the brain, and lets us have control over it temporarily. So we can take charge of breathing even though it's something that's automatic. And we consciously shift it from the fight or flight mode or the faint freeze mode into the strategy mode. Shifting from the chest or lungs, which is the safety mode, into our bellies, which is the survival mode, helps us activate our body response so that the body feels that it's safe. So the little kids tend to breathe with their bellies, and if we can replicate that, then we breathe in instead of breathing with our chest. If we breathe in with our chest, we're filling our lungs so that we will be ready to fight or flight. But if we fill our bellies, we're just moving the part of ourselves that freezes when we get activated into survival mode. And that's why generally when we do that, breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, our body tends to feel a little more relaxed. And our brain can shift into strategy mode. So we're going to talk about 5 categories, A, B, C, D, E, with a picture of an umbrella. You've got that in your handout. That will, that can be effective for all of those. So to slide 5 then is another strategy, which is using the imagination. And an important distinction between, that I'll talk about a little bit later, between an idea and an imaginary trip is that an idea tends to not have sensory experience along with it. We don't necessarily feel what it's like to be walking along. We don't feel the temperature of the air. We don't hear the sounds, see all the sights with just an idea. So the safe place imagery takes breathing and the relaxation that happens with that, and then lets us drift off to an imaginary experience. So let's just practice that a little bit. If you take the breaths in and then let your eyes close and just notice what it's like to breathe in and to breathe out. In and breathe out. Breathe in calm and strength, and let go of that loss to the Browns. Or Georgetown, or whoever you've been watching this afternoon. So then As you take the breath in, let yourself begin to walk along a path, whether that's out in nature, whether it's along the water, along the shore. Just imagine what it's like to walk along. And notice the sounds and the sights, the colors, the temperature of the air, the breeze moving across your face. And just take all that in. Move along at a comfortable pace. And notice up ahead, there's a small turn in the path. And as you get closer, you can imagine that you are taking a turn towards something a little bit more covered, a little bit more secluded. And your imagination can be placing a destination for yourself, someplace that would be a safe place, somewhat hidden from others, but known to you. And as you approach that spot, just notice what your imagination has created for you. Notice if there's a door to walk in, or if you have decided to make a secret entrance. And if you've found a secret entrance, let yourself inside. And as you enter, then notice your surroundings. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Are there places to sit and relax? Are there things to view? All the things that you would want to help you feel safe and soothed in this place of your imagination. We're just taking a quick look around, getting a sense of this place. And when you feel that you have seen and heard and smelled what is present in this place, let yourself know that you can move back toward the entrance and walk out and secure the place, or slide out through the secret entrance. And as you begin to make yourself back to the path, let yourself know how to come back so that you can experience this place anytime that you would like to take a break and to feel safe and soothed as you're going through your day. Walk back along the path that you came. And as you're ready, let yourself notice that you're back in this room. And you might wiggle your toes, move your feet up and down just a little bit, shift in your chair, and just let yourself come back into this room. And when you're ready, You can let your eyes open and see where you are. And that you're back here in the present. Anything that you would say about where you visited, or were you able to picture that?
The art museum where.
Okay.
Because that's where my wife writes.
Okay, all right, right.
There was music playing in there.
Yeah, okay. So you made the art museum, which is a place where you travel to frequently, just made that your safe place to go and be and hear music and be there.
Yeah.
And that has a big part of nature along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Or I saw an owl the other day. Or not owl, but a hawk landed right in front of me.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. So and often parts of nature kind of help us, get kind of tuned into calmness and what feels strong and not frightened. Okay, so that both the breathing and the safe place imagery are things that can be used for helping us get back into the part of our brain that helps either just enjoy positive things or solve problems that we have every day or sort through big complicated things, connect with people. So that's the thing that we're doing just before we get to your handout, which is slide number 6, I believe, here. Which is the umbrella of understanding. And this is a way of talking about contributing factors to some of the problems that we see, that we think of as behavioral, emotional, mental health problems, relational problems. They can be complicated. And the tendency sometimes that we have is to almost think of problem solving around these things as a funnel, that we take all of the possible things that could be underlying factors and kind of bring them together and run them through a spout of behavior problems. So this is a problem, so I'm going to have to change my habit, I'm going to have to stop doing this, I'm going to have to try really hard and change my behavior. And that's great if that works, but there are things that doesn't seem to work for. Most of the things that a behavioral strategy of change works for end up kind of going smoothly. The things that it doesn't work for kind of get stuck or don't go so smoothly or cause us more stress. And so the idea of this umbrella is to sort of turn a funnel over, and an umbrella is kind of the opposite of a funnel. When the rain comes down, it spreads out to the edges. There's a big distribution instead of all coming down to one spot. And so the 5 places on the umbrella, like in the handout that's in the slide, are things to talk about, and we'll go through them one by one. But A is for atypical neurology, which means things like, it's just kind of like the way we're built. But sometimes it could be about injuries also. So our genetics, injuries, other brain-based challenges, things like autism spectrum disorder or ADHD or intellectual disability or specific learning disabilities, or even just some of us are more extroverted and some are more introverted. So those may be things that may either help us or hurt us, depending on the situation. B is for behavior patterns. So habits, some of them good, some of them not so helpful. C for the current environment. And for most of us, we can think in terms of our home is part of our current environment, either our school or our work is part of our current environment, and then our involvement in our community at large, or the support places of support and connection that we have, as also part of our current environment. That doesn't mean current this moment, it means in our day-to-day. D is for distorted perceptions, and that's often what we think of as kind of mental health factors like anxiety. Even if things are going well, I might still feel anxious if I'm kind of seeing things in a distorted way. Even if things are going well, I might feel depressed. I might tend to get overly focused or obsessed on certain things. I could think that people are trying to hurt me when they're not. There are ways that we have distortions about what's going on around us. And then E is our experience of the past and present, but especially our experience of the past can be a contributor to the ways that we're making decisions and how we're reacting. So going to slide 7 is just a little bit more about atypical neurology. So one of the primary strategies for atypical neurology, which just means my brain doesn't quite work in sync with everyone else. Hopefully atypical doesn't sound judgmental. It's a description that we all process things our own unique way. Sometimes the way I process things is different enough from the ways that other people around me do that we're kind of out of sync, and it's hard to make progress. So from the education setting with individualized education plans, IEPs, we have this word accommodations, which is the idea that when the way I think about and process and naturally respond doesn't work so well, then instead of asking myself to be different or shape up or don't be that way, which is working against my capacities and my abilities, I set myself up for success. If I say, I always forget my car keys in the morning because I'm so absent-minded once I get in a rush, then I'll say, I'm going to put one of those hooks on the door, and by the door where I can put up my keys. And every night when I come in, I'm going to put my keys right up there, and I'm going to come in and go about my business. I'm not going to try to think about, okay, now where are my keys? Where are my keys? All night long, because that's not going to work very well. And in the morning, when I need to leave and go do what I do, I'm going to know that the keys are going to be right there on that hook. And that's an accommodation for the fact that I'm kind of absent-minded, right? So I've set myself up for success. There might be all kinds of things that we do when we recognize our own patterns of thinking or not doing well with certain activities. And rather than trying to insist upon ourselves or others that we be different than we are, we can make accommodations. We can set ourselves up for success. Is there something you do that helps you set yourself up for success?
When I'm working, I put the tool down, and then the next thing I know, I don't know where I laid it down.
Yes.
So I haven't figured out how to
Okay,
solve
you
it.
need a strategy for that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's the when you have tools, they're in their place when they're stored, but they're not in their place while you're working with them. So yes, it can be hard to know, where'd I put that? Okay, so, and that means also that, like, if I have a hard time starting conversations with people because I'm not so comfortable socially, that maybe I need to have some practice in conversation starters. How do I start a conversation with people? I need to have that like memorized because I get stressed out when I'm in that situation, so I need to have a plan ahead of time. I'm not going to be able to think of it on the spot. One of the cool things that's out there is a club called Toastmasters for people who get anxious about speaking in public. And so people can go to Toastmasters, and I've talked with several people who have said, I have trouble speaking in public, so I went to Toastmasters and I started just having the opportunity to prepare something to say, get feedback from other people where I knew it was supportive, and become better at speaking in public. The next slide, slide number 8, I believe, is B. So we did A, which is atypical neurology. B is behavioral, and I have my little finger trap here for the behavioral B thing. And it's one thing that people often turn to. It's easy to understand about behavioral that we have things called natural consequences. Like if I make a choice that's foolish, then I'm going to probably have a natural consequence. Like things are not going to turn out well, and I'm going to go, wow, what was I thinking, right? And so if I decide, as the person in front of me in traffic today decided they weren't going to stop for stop signs and stoplights, I did, fortunately for that person, whether it was a man or a woman, they didn't have any natural consequences that happened that I could see. They didn't get hit or run into anyone. But if they keep doing that, my guess is they probably will. That's the kind of thing that helps us change our behavior, is when we make choices based on something. If it's not a good way of choosing, we'll get natural consequences, and then we'll change our behavior. I hadn't really thought about whether there's some other idea, but the person could have, of course, the person could have had current circumstances that they were rushing someone to the hospital, right? So that's not their usual way of choosing how to drive in traffic. That was just for the moment. The natural consequence may be that they got the person they cared about to medical attention on time, and so that may have been a choice that was rewarded with positive consequences. But the finger trap idea is that we know that when you put your fingers in, the harder you pull, the more difficult it is to get your fingers out, right? So the point is, not every problem is solved by trying harder. Some problems are solved by having a strategy, by knowing kind of how things work. And of course, with finger traps, you actually push your fingers into them further and then twist out instead of just pulling harder. And once you know that strategy, then you're fine. So with behavioral problems, instead of trying hard, like most of us, if you have a situation you've tried and you may have tried again and it's not working, instead of saying, well, I just need to try harder, I need to use more willpower, I need to up my reward that I'm giving myself if I succeed, or increase my punishment if I fail, that instead just take a step back and get clear about why you want to change your behavior, or why I want to change my behavior. Why do I want to change what I'm doing? And when I'm clear about that, then I can take a fresh look at how I'm trying to get what I want. Because the behavioral choice that I'm making may be about something else that I want. So getting clear about the why. Why is this important to me? What am I shooting for? What is my aim? And then, okay, how can I take a fresh look at this? And we can ask ourselves, which is helpful for our own insight. When did I succeed by stopping my attempts to try harder? Because almost all of us have done that before. We've stopped trying harder, and we've just taken a moment, and then we had a little light bulb of insight and went, wait a minute, I could do it this way. And then it works out because we've taken a fresh look at that. The next slide, slide number 9, is current environment. And we have a picture of a horse with blinders on here because the stress of our current situation I have here, the stress of today's situations at home, school, work, and in our communities will remind us of stress from the past or relationship stress from the past. And if we're in a non-supportive environment, that's the important thing about the current environment. If it's not a supportive environment, there's a good chance that those past reminders will be what we call a trigger. We'll be triggered into feeling like we're powerless, like we were in this previous situation. And then we tend to see ourselves as not having options, not having skills and abilities for managing the situation. So the stressful situation becomes more stressful because on top of the stress, we end up feeling powerless. We're reminded, oh, this is what we may not even think that, but it may just feel like this is that same situation where I was stuck and I couldn't do anything about it and it was horrible. We can't see the opportunities for problem solving. It's particularly difficult for children at home and school because there's not so many options for them to make choices about things being differently when they're really, really stressful. Still, the more that we can get support in the current environment, the less likely we're going to be feeling like there are no options and that we are powerless to change things. One of the things that can be helpful about the breathing exercise and the safe place imagery is that even if we're in a stressful situation, we can revisit what it's like to not feel so stressed, not feel so overwhelmed. And when we kind of recapture that feeling, then we've pulled ourselves out of the current environment so that that we can take a fresh look at it. Sometimes that makes it possible for us to look at different options and ways of going about things differently. Sometimes that helps us see that we need to make a choice to just get to a different place, to be in a different situation. Slide 10 is D then. So we're doing A, B, C, D, distorted perceptions. Distorted perceptions are typically what we think of as mental health symptoms, so feeling overly anxious, feeling overly depressed. One of the things that happens, like when these are all consuming, it's very hard, but and so it's very helpful to get assistance and help and treatment. At other times, we might feel overly anxious or overly depressed or feel worried about people's motives more than we should. And oftentimes, our own inner awareness, if we can go to our safe place, or if we can calm ourselves with relaxing, or other things that help us kind of recapture that part of our, that state where we're in our strategy part of our brain. If we can recapture that state of mind, we can be aware that, oh, I'm kind of overreacting. Like we can see ourselves more clearly in that situation. We might not be able to stop feeling the anxiety, but I can still say, I notice that I'm worrying about that too much. And then maybe figure out a strategy for helping myself not do that. Or I know people aren't trying to harm me, but it's still, I just can't help thinking that. I can't help feeling that. So that your own awareness, or our own awareness of how I'm reacting in a situation, when our mental health symptoms or conditions are not strong and overwhelming, we often still have the perspective to be able to kind of notice for ourselves, oh, this is happening, but I can see that's not matching up with the situation. It feels that way. The next slide, slide 11, is kind of talks about where distorted perceptions and past experiences, which is E, D and E, kind of come together. So on the umbrella, the D and the E. Beliefs that were developed at a young age can be slow to even impossible to shift if they were forged in the furnace of trauma. Well, I'm calling it that. Like, if I blame myself for something that happened, if I blame myself for my parents' divorce when I was 4, that's not really something that I had control of. That's not something that I should be blaming myself for. That's the adults had that decision to make or had that experience to go through. But I may feel and therefore believe, because it happened at a traumatic time, I may believe that it was my fault. Self-blaming and feelings of victimhood are beliefs that served us towards survival. So in that situation, like being more subdued and being quiet when parents are upset and dysregulated and emotional because they're going through a difficult time, it's helpful as a child perhaps to be more subdued and to be more compliant and to not complain about what's happening. You might get less negative feedback back to yourself. That may be a survival belief. But it can be difficult to replace that feeling with a new sense of empowerment. The younger we were when that trauma occurred, the harder it is to distinguish between, was this something that happened to me, that I was, that I felt bad when my parents split up, or is this just an idea? So if I was 4 years old and that happened, I may remember it as if it was actually my fault, even though I said something, as I said, even though it was something I had no control over. So sometimes just the idea that I was in control, even though that's false, the feeling that I was in control still remains and still is very potent. So slide 12, experiences of the past. Our early warning systems in the brain will go on alert when we notice something that is a reminder of past danger or pain. So this is what we call a flashback. Our brain goes, whoa, that happened before. This is how this is gonna happen. We remember the experience, not just the idea. So we're taken back to the thing that happened. We're not just remembering, I remember when that happened. Yeah, that does have some similarity to now. So we're not kind of disconnected from it. We're pulled right back into it and feel as if that's happening. So common in slide, this is 13. Common trauma-generated beliefs. I can't trust my feelings because they're leaving me feeling defenseless. So if I feel my feelings and I have strong emotions, then I feel consumed by that and it leaves me undefended against whatever's happening. If I'm little, something bad is going to happen because I'm letting my guard down. If a child is in a situation or a home where there is physical abuse, They tend to be on guard for something bad happening, but also there's a sense that no matter what I do, something bad's going to happen. And then also the belief that it's all my fault. So I should have done something to prevent this. Those are things that often we carry with us from trauma, and they're not just thoughts, they become beliefs. So the two things that we talked about before, the breathing, which helps move us out of the paralyzed faint or freeze and into letting our brains think more fully and more imaginatively. That plus the safe place imagery of going to a place that's safe and calm are helpful really for all of those things. There's on the next slide, there's a picture of a train, and we've done this kind of guided imagery before, but it's taking an imaginary train ride. And this is a way of looking at experiences from the past. If we take a situation that was uncomfortable sometime in the past, we can watch it out the window as we go by in a train ride. But first, the way that we do this one is that we think of something where we felt successful, something that we felt proud of, felt like this was a good accomplishment. And so take a moment to think about that. I'm not necessarily going to ask you to share about that, but just take a moment to have something in mind that is a positive accomplishment, something you felt good about. It could have been when you were little, could have been yesterday. Just that good feeling of, I got this done, right? Okay. And then just notice, how that felt good, and you feel competent and able to make something good happen, which we all want to be able to do. We all want to be able to make good things happen. So then on the train ride, we'll start out, you'll be looking out the window, and we'll come back and get the idea of what we're looking at first. Then we'll go around the corner, and then we'll look at the situation where you accomplished something, where you felt proud and felt good about it, felt like you did something positive. And then we'll go into a tunnel, and the lights will go black. And then we'll come back out, and we'll be right here. So there's just kind of 4 sections. Looking out the window at one scene, and then at a second, then it'll be all black, and then we'll be back here. It'll take under a minute for the whole train ride. It'll be fast. If we are looking at one of these 3 ideas, that I can't trust my feelings, or something bad is going to happen, or that's all my fault. Like if one of those feels like there's something about it that that kind of, I have that yucky feeling sometimes, right? Either I can't trust my feelings, it's throwing me off, or something bad's going to happen, or this is all my fault, I should have done something. So if you have that, pick one of those, and when we look out the window the first time, you can just look out and see what goes with that. So that'll be our train ride. All right. So let's start with just kind of It's probably most helpful to kind of close your eyes and imagine yourself getting seated on the train, and you're seated looking forward, and you've got a big window to the side, and you can feel the train starting to just move a little bit and just pick right up to speed. And in just a couple moments, as you're moving along, you're looking out, we're going to approach a corner, and then as we come around the corner, you look out and you can see that thing that fits with your negative feeling that we talked about. It's all my fault, or something bad's going to happen, or I can't trust my feelings, they're leading me to vulnerability. And as you're passing along the scenery, you can just kind of see that out there. And then just in a moment or two, we're coming up to the first curve, second curve, I guess, and going around that curve. And as we come around that corner, you look out and see your accomplishment. You can see yourself achieving that thing that you were working toward. And just noticing how you felt when that was going on. And then just a moment, we're going uphill a little bit, and we're going to take a turn. And now you're into a tunnel. It's black, 2, 3, 4. Now you're back out in the light, and you're right back here in the room, and the train comes to a stop. And you can open your eyes and be back present here. So that was quick, right? Yeah. And anything you noticed about that?
I thought there was a car stuck in mud or something, and I see myself helping them out.
Yeah, all right, yeah. And how's that felt? How'd that feel?
Well, yeah, it felt good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and that's a really helpful thing, as you see something that's just a simple accomplishment, but probably important to the people that you helped. So you see a car stuck in the mud, and you help them get themselves out, help push them get themselves out. They're able to go on their way, and you feel good about helping them out.
First I thought they were in a flood, but I thought, well, that's too much. So, I think they were just stuck in the mud.
Just stuck in the mud, okay.
I can see myself helping them out with that.
Yeah, yeah, all right. And something you've done before.
Yeah.
Yes, helping people get unstuck. And that's interesting because that's a literal thing that we do sometimes for people. It's also something that we do for people sometimes figuratively. When we are there for them, we help them get unstuck. And so connecting that feeling of success right following, if we do that right following a negative feeling or belief that we have about ourselves, it helps us shift out of that negative space where we can do what we call a spiral, or begin to feel negative and think of other negative things and feel down and disappointed and maybe feel that we're inadequate. When we go around the corner to see a success, we're practicing that shift out of a negative thought process into our ability to do something positive and good, something we feel good about. For the last slide, which is wholeness and mental health, I just want to draw the distinction between symptom relief and healing. Symptom relief is very important and very helpful. If we notice that things that are bothering us, we might seek help and get relief from feeling so anxious all the time, or we might be able to sleep better at night, or we might be able to focus better during the day. We might find ourselves not being so irritable. And those things can set the stage then for things like healing, which have more to do with being able to look at some of these 5 things on the umbrella and see how beliefs that limit us are tied to past experiences, or how things that we get frustrated about ourselves with are really about level A, or things we get frustrated about with people in our families may be something that's just how they're wired. And so the things that are going to make it successful is being able to set things up for success, make accommodations, and begin to solve those problems at the level of what they are, instead of converting everything in that funnel into behavioral and making it all about just trying harder. If you just cared, you would just try harder, and that would fix everything. But that generally doesn't fix everything. Most things that are stuck are about A, C, D, and E, or even something else, but not just about behavioral choices. And so that concludes our session for today, and our series on the healing zone. The idea that we can all assist each other in healing by being understanding, by listening, by sharing our own experience, and by not jumping to conclusions about how problems are started, or even how they're being resolved.